Hey, Cindy, just a test. Do you hear me? You hear me okay?
Yes,
All
we
right,
do.
thank you.
Okay. Is Carol probably going to come in?
It's my understanding Phil's planning on coming.
Okay,
Carol's out in the lobby.
okay,
We're trying to do that.
okay. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Okay, for roll call, we currently have Aaron and Ron and myself present, and Carol Sand will be joining us shortly, and we have Brian Petersburg joining us remotely today. First, we'll read the mission and values statement. Ron, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, I can. At Decorah Community School District, we embrace student learning and well-being as our fundamental purpose. We will, in partnership with our students, families, and community, make the world a better place. The mission of the Decorah Community School District is learning, thriving, creating our legacy. The vision of the Decorah Community School District is Decorah Community School District will be a collaborative, innovative, learning-centered organization, empowering students to embrace their personal strengths and create their future.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, under old business. First is the second reading of board policies 4.1 or 401.1, 503.1, 503.2, and 503.3.
And these are the recommended from the ICB in regards to student conduct, student suspension. There's nothing in here that I would just say, I would recommend we approve these.
Okay, and as the board looks through each document, recommended changes are highlighted in green.
They were, I cleaned them up today, so now they're just copied and pasted as such.
Okay, excuse me. I see one of the attachments still has one green.
Okay.
But,
Oh, that's gonna be the next one.
okay,
That's gonna be the second reading of use of public funds. I'm pretty sure is what you're looking at there.
okay,
So these are recommendations that we got from Iowa Association of School Board of changes to make the policies. The second reading of 705.4 R1 is change that we're gonna make we initiated the change. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that just because I have more examples on, or I have an example on that.
Tim, can I ask you a question? Would,
Yeah.
so the ones that you clean them up. So I was looking through those today again, and I was looking for the changes since they weren't there in red or a different color. You know, obviously I couldn't see the changes, so I didn't know it was different from the document from before. My recommendation would be to keep those different colors of the changes until we go through the final reading.
I
Would
can do
make
that.
sense?
Yeah, there's a couple, I get them in a different format, but I figured out a way to do that. So I can do that moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Well, given that this is a second reading and that most of this is non-negotiable anyway, I move the approval on second reading of board policies 401.1, 503.1, 503.2, and 503.3.
Second.
okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And next under old business is the second reading of board policy 705.4 R1, use of public funds regulation.
And so what's highlighted in green on this, and the big change is we had in our old policy, supporting staff, this is the language in the old policy. So we didn't have it in the new recommended from ISAB, but we liked it because it gave, allowance in both senses of the words I can think to use it, but permission and created a fund for, building administrators and district administrators, the superintendent, to use like $600 at the building level, $1,500 for the principal, to use for treats and snacks and promote, goodwill among employees. And we didn't have that in there, so technically at conference time, it was, well, we don't have it in our board policy, and that's the time, certainly want to make sure that.
It's really, I was just gonna say, it's really appreciated at conference time, especially by coaches who just, I mean, they're coaching right up until the time that they have to be back for conferences, so.
And it's
to grab
it's-
some food is really nice.
And it's expected with public funds that we use them for a public purpose, so we just have to define that we're gonna say that supporting staff is one of our public purposes, and I don't think a large amount, as a superintendent, that I would use that as my little fund. We did the trivia night, we'll do another one, and stuff like that would go toward that, but so that's the big addition to this policy, is adding back in language we had before.
Yeah, certainly, staff retention is a very important goal of the board. This contributes to that, so I would move that we approve the new policy 705.4 R1.
I'll second that.
Any further questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, next I'll ask for an approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is the approval of consent items. Minus December 11th and January 4th bills and personnel. Or excuse me, minutes. Not minus, including the minutes of the December 11th and January 4th meetings, excuse me.
Carly, did you see anything
I
to
didn't see
exclude?
anything.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items.
A second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Next is.
Mark
open
Carolyn.
forum. I know. Okay,
I assume it came from
from Brian.
Florida.
Could be. Okay, next is open forum and communication from the public. Does anyone in attendance like to address the board? Okay. No presentation for tonight?
No presentation for tonight.
Oh,
Okay, we'll move right along to new business. First is the
Mark.
approval. Brian, we're getting a little feedback from.
Yeah, sorry. I just turned my phone off. I got a call came in. I apologize.
That's okay. Just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, new business. First item is approval of the revised agreement to establish a consortium to jointly administer an instructional program at the Crossroads site.
So the big change with this is just adding, we've got Clayton Ridge that is interested in joining the consortium, as well as possibly Olwine. So we added those. We did a little, I asked Carrie Allers to do a little bit of suggestions from a legal aspect. And I think the big thing is we renamed, it was called like the Decorah Crossroads. Well, she wanted to make sure that it's Crossroads Academy and it's not Decorah Crossroads because we don't we're the fiscal agent for Crossroads, but we don't employ the Crossroads staff. We don't technically Crossroad is like it's a weird kind of, I would say a private school that operates in the district is probably the best way I could describe it. But we're the fiscal agent. And so that means that we have a little bit more authority over it than other districts. And I'm gonna look at Sarah now. Other changes that
There was a few other wording changes among like some of the legal things that you talked about. It had said that Crossroads serves preschool students, which it doesn't, so it was changed to kindergarten. Eastern Alameda was listed in there, but they haven't sent students for a really long time, and so that one was taken out, but Clayton Ridge and O-Line needed to be added. ELL was another service that was listed in there that is not part of, they don't have any ELL services supporting Crossroads, so that was taken out as well. And I think there was just a piece about reviewing the agreement every 2 years.
Mhm.
and this is our consortium, which is the schools that send children to Crossroads. So we've got an agreement with Crossroads to run a school in our town, but we also have an agreement with like the 10, 12 school districts about what the rules are for children that go there.
And Clayton Ridge, O-Line, I believe, has already approved it. Clayton Ridge, I think, just did too, but their boards have to approve being part of the consortium too. So
Mhm.
it goes both ways.
This is just kind of an opportunity to clean up the language and make sure it reflected what current practice was.
Yep.
So.
Any other questions?
I think a
About
good
the agreement.
refresh to the agreement is
Mhm.
always appropriate.
We foresee any challenges with a school like O-Line being, about an hour, give or take away with logistics? or-
That's a really good question. That's up to each individual district too, if they're gonna send children there. And it's based on need. I can tell you that O-Line uses the lead center in Waverly. And I haven't mapped that out, but
Mhm.
It's about 45.
yeah, I don't know
Give or
which one,
take.
yeah. So
I
they're
would say
probably used to already transporting children a
It's
distance.
just-
it really depends upon IEP teams, and what they feel is the best placement for students. So, Crossroads might be an option for some students, depending on the needs and what the lead center offers versus what Crossroads offers, and just, there's a lot of, different things that play into that, and why an IEP team would want to send a student to Crossroads, so.
And it details that school vehicles from member districts can cross into our district to transport
Yeah,
transport students.
they will transport, all the way through.
So they do their own, Crossroads does their own hiring, they do their own evaluation, they do their own payroll.
We help them with their,
We help them with payroll, okay, so that's part of being the host,
yeah.
okay.
Like we bill all the school districts, the money comes in here and then we help it get dispersed.
Mhm.
But yeah, we're not the employer.
It's interesting.
It's,
change.
uh,
I mean, it
it-
works.
And what's super interesting to me, fun fact of the day that I learned last year is Crossroads, the company that owns Crossroads, their home office is in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Milwaukee,
Oh.
which is right where my parents live. So, and we lived in Wauwatosa. So I was like, a school that's 4 hours away.
Hmm.
Wow. They have a school in
Prairie.
Prairie and a school here.
Yeah, the administrator who runs Crossroads also runs the Prairie site.
I would move to approve the revised agreement to establish a consortium to jointly administer an instructional program at the Crossroads site.
I will second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, approval of vehicle bids.
So I was trying to make this so that this was easy to understand.
This was a big improvement here.
And so I think there's a couple questions. I think the 10-passenger van is something that we can all agree on. And then it was, what would we do with the other vehicles? And at the last meeting, we talked about, should we be looking at a hybrid? Should we be looking at a plug-in? Should we be looking at a gas? Understanding that whatever you do there is going to be like, if it's a plug-in, we have to build up the infrastructure for that. So I think the first question I would ask the board is, do you want us to pursue a plug-in option, a hybrid option, or gas option? Because once we have that question answered, then I could say, well, here are the vehicles in Decorah. Then the second, as a spoiler, the second question is, depending on what you want us to pursue, we would say, do we need to stay in town because some of the options are more available if we leave town?
I think a first question is, what's the intended use of this vehicle? How many people is it likely to transport, and how far are they going?
So we have a van, but then we talked about, we need another kind of
yeah.
vehicle for us, for basically staff people to go to Elkader. Des Moines,
Yes,
stuff.
and so the data we have is just for January, because we've switched over to a different system, but it's really slick to be able to look at the vehicles, at the cars and vans going out. Jim and I just looked at this today. For the whole month, there's like 7 vehicles going out, and in 6 of them, it would be 3 or less people, which we feel like, that's a good percentage. Now, it's not always, so let's say 90% of the trips that we could take, and those trips are, and so then the distance is the next question. They're gonna be to like Elkader. Well, Chris went to the Alma Key Bus Garage. There was a meeting in Elkader. There's an insurance meeting in Kelmer. There's another meeting in Elkader. Another meeting in Elkader. So we're about 3 up to Elkader. And then Madison, Wisconsin for a track and field meeting. So those are just the ones that you would get, like, we're doing other trips, but there's a bus going to Charles City, or there's a bus going to the wrestling scrimmage. So we just filtered it down to vehicles that would be a car or a van.
Mhm. Is there any good reason I noticed you have an SUV on here. Is there any good reason why we would look at an SUV over a sedan?
Well, I think that there's always an idea that you get the biggest one you can because you're a school, because you're never knowing when you're gonna need the extra space and you can't create it. But I think your question is the question I always ask is, there's always one, like if I drive to Des Moines or Ames, I don't need to be driving in a van.
Right.
And if we switched one van for a car, would it get used? Yes. Would we ever have a situation where all the vans are out and we're like, oh, we're just a little tight? I defer to Jim on that, but like, there are days that lots of stuff go out.
Yeah,
But-
so kind of for instance too, like here, before Christmas, when we did Opus and whatnot to Ames, so then obviously we had multiple staff members going down buses. Yeah, at that point in time with something like that, now we used every vehicle that we had in the district, plus how many buses. So it's not that that's a very seldom type. Yet you see it more frequent once we get into spring with them using, for sports and whatnot too. But the winter time, the Opus and the choir and, with the band, then we have a lot of individuals, especially prior to Christmas, taking individual vehicles. So a lot of 1 and 2 or 3, people going versus multiple.
And the Opus was the same time as the School Board Association.
Right.
Cause we were,
And mock trial.
and my,
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of the perfect storm.
Now, in our last meeting, when we tabled this, weren't we talking about a passenger van and an additional car? Weren't we talking about two separate vehicles?
We were talking about two vehicles at that time, yeah, and we're still, I guess, we're looking at a 10-passenger van. We bid out 10-passenger van and 2 sedans. And I'm not seeing the van bid, but that was, we had talked about that, so.
How many are we at? We're interested in buying a van and then
A 10-passenger van for sure. And
how many vehicles?
And a sedan or replace one of the vans.
Yeah, so basically we were looking at, we ended up, we had 2 sedans priced. Yet 2, as Tim and I talked, okay, is it more efficient right now just to get one? So we did a 10-passenger van and a sedan, and then what we did with the last previous ones, we had 5 bids done on hybrids to see, so we could do a comparison on hybrids versus a regular gas car.
For me to stop some confusion here, are we absolutely in need of a van? So that, so then we can have that van conversation, if that is the case, and then we're gonna have a car conversation after that? Or are we trying to determine if we need 2 vans and not, I mean, the van's a big difference between the van and the cars.
So, we'd like to replace one passenger van or one minivan with a passenger van. So that's one conversation.
Okay,
And then we'd like to replace the second vehicle, which we thought was gonna be a minivan, but I think it's gonna be the Uplander with vehicle X, which very well
Okay.
could be a sedan.
okay, that's okay. So we only have one van, what we're talking about, didn't we talk about a 10-passenger van and a 12-passenger van? The last board
Yeah,
meeting?
we have a bid for a 10-passenger van. The 12 passenger is pretty unique because you have to get a used one. And so that would have to be the kind of thing where the board would have to approve us to purchase it at a certain price and one would have to become available. There's not one sitting on a lot that we could buy, and if they are, they go kind of quickly.
Right. Now, I talked to Jim a little bit about this, and Jim, didn't you and Adam, or I think you said that with some conversation with Adam, that a 10-passenger would take care of a major part of what we want a van, what the needs for the van, is that correct?
Yeah, so Adam and I went through as far as, a 12 or 10 passenger, and we both pretty much come to an agreement that, a 10 passenger would be very sufficient for our sports.
I also prefer the concept of buying a new vehicle versus inheriting an older vehicle that who knows what kind of life it has lived before it gets to us.
Is this bid we have, is this a bid or is this for conversation discussion right now?
It's on the agenda for approval.
Okay, so we have one bid for one 10-passenger van, and that's, so if we either gonna approve that or disapprove it, I assume,
Yes,
okay?
So I guess just for purposes of moving discussion along, I would propose that we segregate these and approve the van. So I would make a motion that we approve the purchase of the 2024 Ford T350 10-passenger van.
I second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. And next we'll talk about vehicle X.
vehicle X.
So back to Tim's point about the original premise, which is we need to define which type of car we're looking for. A trip to Des Moines is 208 miles, give or take. So if we're looking at, potentially an electric vehicle, they get 259 miles worth of range. But then you're gonna have to charge it. And the return question is, how long is that charge going to need to be in effect for? And down the road, maybe that's a different question, but in today's setting, I would view a hybrid as a better choice at the moment than a purely electric vehicle, given that distance, unless we'd like to say we're gonna take a different vehicle from the district to get there versus maybe all the trips to Elkader can be done by this vehicle.
Yeah, I think we need to stay nimble, knowing that there are times when everything is used. And we do not currently have a charging station here at this location, do we?
No, we didn't.
So I agree with the points that
I do too.
that you made, Aaron. I think that maybe 5 years from now, when charging stations are more available and more people are driving electric cars and used to that lifestyle or time management to charge, but I think for now, it's wise to consider hybrid options instead.
I 100% agree with that.
I do too.
And I think it would make sense to do a hybrid if it makes financial sense. But I don't think we should do a hybrid just to do one. But if it makes financial sense, I'm completely all in. Hybrids are great vehicles, and looking at what we have here, you know, if we're looking at the vehicles that are here, if this is what we're gonna go after, you know, if you'd have 3 or 4 people in it, that Chevy Malibu sure seems like for $26,000 versus trying to, you know, look for a hybrid. The initial cost looks to me that's going to be considerably higher, and it would take a lot of miles to pay that back. And surely I love hybrids, but I'm not against it. But for the district, you know, using their dollars where we're trying to be more, we need to be more frugal with declining enrollments. I think that probably that Malibu would probably serve our purposes.
And I think, you know, passenger safety should also be important as well.
Sure.
I agree with that too, Brian. As I was looking at this, I think that the value of buying locally too is important. And we also want something that is safe on the road. So a small vehicle like a Honda Insight, that's a smaller vehicle, less safe probably. And the gas mileage 35 highway is good mileage, really.
Yeah, I can certainly support the Malibu.
That would be,
I'm sure it wouldn't be too difficult to find locally.
no. And Brian's point sounds like every time I talk to my father about buying a hybrid, he's like, how much more are you paying? And how long will it take you to make that money back is one of the things that you do have to consider. Obviously, you want to be green, but, again, if this is a vehicle that's gonna run to Elkader and get 35 miles a gallon, that's not bad at all. So that'd be a great recommendation to make. But we also will still take questions.
I'll make a motion that we approve for the purchase of the Chevy Malibu.
I'll second the purchase of the 2024 Chevy Malibu from Decorah Chevy Chrysler.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion or additional questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, set public hearings for 2024-25. Type of calendar, hours or days, and school calendar for Monday, February 12th, 2024.
And we just need to set a public hearing because you have to have certain public hearings in winter and spring of the year. And one of them is this starts with the calendar. So I would recommend we set this for 6:30 on Monday, the 12th.
Which is conveniently our next board meeting.
Which is conveniently the next board meeting. So we will start with a public hearing. We're gonna work on the calendar with admin and district leadership team. There's a sample for the board to look at. Just kind of a rough draft later in my report, but by the time we get to next month, we'd be ready to have a public hearing and could possibly later in the meeting approve it.
Is there still a question of whether we're doing hours or
No, but,
days?
in my experience, you should have two of those public, you do this annually. Every year, I'll just make sure that I'm saying I'm gonna recommend an hours calendar every year.
Mhm.
Okay, so we need a motion, an official motion, a vote.
Just be nice to have a
Okay.
motion. I move that we set the public hearing for the type of calendar for Monday, February 12th at 6:30 PM.
One second.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 I,
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is the review of the middle school roof project.
Yes, so, and I bet Carol has some insights on this, but the middle school roof unfortunately leaks, and it's 17 years old and maybe has leaked for 16 and a half years. It was, and I don't know that much about roofs, but that's one of the things you do as a superintendent is you learn. And I just happened to, my college roommate does roofing in Minneapolis, so I was like, Eric, come and look at this roof, and he'd never seen one like it. And it's called Armor Light. And, there's a snazzy video, from the 70s about how it's the roof of the future. But it hasn't really had that good. We did at one point in time, maybe 8 to 10 years ago, a tape fix it job, at least one, for $80,000.
Who's we? We.
Well, I wasn't me, I
Oh,
wasn't.
I wonder, is that the district?
district.
Our
Yeah.
own employees did it?
Oh, no.
We hired someone to do that.
So the company that put the roof on came back and said, this is how you fix the leaks. And this is what you're gonna need, and we bid it, and it helped,
But it's still leaks.
wasn't a permanent solution.
And that, actually, that tape is getting to the point too where it's starting to break down.
And not a big fan of bad solutions and throwing good money after bad. Normally for roofs, you just come out with, at least the districts I've been in, you come up with a little section and say, let's do this, the roof over the gym this year, and then next year we'll do the elementary wing, and the next year you do this, and you're trying to, among other things, keep costs down, but also you don't want to pass this threshold of $139,000 where you're required by state law to hire an architect. What's unique about this is we're talking about pulling up the Armor Light aluminum roof. Is that the material you would say it is?
Yep.
And putting down an EPDM, do I have the right initial? Which is just a rubberized roof that we have all district. We could possibly do it in sections, and we could go out for bid and do it in sections. But so that we know, we should anticipate that this project's gonna cost $800 to $1 million. So we've had my friend who works for a different roofing company look at it. He was shocked. He was like, I've never seen a roof like this. We had the folks from Garland come up, and the guy started in on, well, we might be able to do this, I might be able to, well, he told us what we had done wasn't up to specs, which was 8 years ago, so that was frustrating, but he was like trying to fix it. I said, no, we're not gonna fix this, because I got like one chance to get this right with the board. But then we had someone from Shy Pattery, which is an architect firm who's replaced this before, come up, and he I mean, I don't know, that guy seemed to know a lot about roofs. He seemed to know a lot about everything. But this is kind of a unique situation, because we're gonna be doing a whole roof. We're gonna have to hire an architect. It's not often that, I don't know how much experience architects have, because talk to me about how the concerns are gonna be what's underneath, right?
There'll be some concern for that, correct? They might find some areas that they need to pull up some decking and stuff, but Yeah, that's all you're getting.
And so
You don't know what's going on with it.
we need to make sure the architect writes a proposal so that whatever company comes in and does the work, it could be any company, because the roof we're talking about is a pretty generic roof.
Right.
We're not asking for a fancy special roof. But we need to make sure that they are gonna pull up the roof and make sure the decking is sound underneath and not come back to us and say, oh, we have a change order for $150,000 or something.
Yeah, you could see that if you got into an area, and, well, it wouldn't be that much, but you could see change orders for stuff that happened underneath of it, and you don't know what's going on underneath there.
There might be mold issues.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's concrete on top of. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was gonna say, I'm agreeing with you. We probably should assume there'll be some change orders. Because we can't have somebody bid it without the knowledge of what they might have to do underneath it. So a change order in this case is probably gonna be expected, I think.
I don't know, cause I think in talking to different people, they would come out and pull up part of the roof to see what it looks like, but I mean,
Typically, they do a core to see what's under, so they'll just do a bore and pull a core out, so they know what their insulation is, what their decking is, any underlayment, stuff like that.
But I would say, Brian, to your point, I think the better the RFP can be written, the fewer change orders we can anticipate.
Correct.
And that's where I get to my question, recommendation, is, I know, Nick did our turf project, did a nice job with our turf project, is doing our elementary school. When I asked him how much experience he'd have, he just kind of said, yeah, I can do that. My recommendation is that the board allow me to go out and ask for architects to be our architect on this project and demonstrate an experience specifically in this kind of change from an Armalite roof to removing an Armalite roof.
And would you consider just an engineering firm
And when we
and not and to me, I would ask engineering firms too, not just architect.
okay,
So can we
Most
just,
of the architects are probably gonna hire an engineer.
sure.
can we go back for a minute? So this has been leaking since the first few years of the roof, and when Garland, is that their name?
Yes.
When they were called and they came and looked at it, did they take any responsibility for the manufacturer of this roof for the installation and no, was it under warranty?
Was it under warranty?
Yeah,
They just kept chasing it like we did. They'd come up and they'd throw a patch on here and there and well, let's see what happens, and then start making it again or somewhere else
and the original warranty was for how many years?
well, I don't know.
Is that an information?
Well, I don't
found
think-
somewhere, or?
Possibly. I'm not sure it's gonna make a difference for today.
Yeah, if I remember right, we did talk, Ron, maybe you might remember this as well, that there was some conversation about should we go after them for not having a roof that met our expectations or expectations of anybody that putting on a roof in a new building. And I think years ago, we had that conversation. We were past the time where that would be successful. That I think we even ran it by council.
Yeah. Yeah, I recall we did. That was, at the time before we decided to spend the 88 to kind of take the bull by the horns ourselves instead of having them come back and do something that didn't work and then come back and do something else that didn't work. So, no, that was, I remember, a source of great frustration at the time that the warranty really didn't warrant much.
So Tim, when you mentioned finding an architect or engineer with experience with this roof, do you have a sense, or does anyone have a sense of how common this type of roof is in our region of the country?
Yeah.
No, I think she's talking about how many Armalite roofs do we know of? And just in anecdotal conversations with Shive Hattery and the Armorlight guy, sounds like Louisa Muscatine had this problem and transitioned, and maybe he did have a lawsuit, but attacked it more vigorously and sooner. I don't know if we'll find a lot that have had experience.
Right,
I think what's important is that the engineer knows not so much about taking the old one off, it's about putting a new one on that's gonna get the job done.
right.
This, you can destroy something without having to know a whole lot about it.
And according to that video, I did watch it, and supposedly this roof is recyclable. Recyclable materials. It doesn't sound like it's toxic materials, at least. They have to try to, because that would be a lot more expensive to dispose of. Unless there's more.
I think it's aluminum, and that's, you're right, that would be recyclable. But Tim, I think I think what we probably do want to go an RFP, either an architect or an engineer, and to probably be the architect and ask for RFPs, or at least information that they have that really have a lot of history with roofs versus, other just building projects. There are obviously some architects or engineers out there that really know a lot more about roofs than others. And that's our goal, to try to find one of those, I think.
And I would think the big thing would be including engineers is, not to simplify the difference between architects and engineers, but we don't need it to be designed. We just need it to
Right.
not leak.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll work out a bid for services, that we will get out and see what we can find. Greg, is there anything I'm missing?
No.
Okay.
No,
Is there a pitch on this roof, Greg?
well.
Or is it just flat, or is there some pitch?
Pitch up. It's a very small pitch. It's probably, I think it's a 1/4 inch per 4 foot. So this is-
But that,
The sewer line.
but that part, or the people that I've been on the roof with, they didn't think that was the problem. So. I mean, the Armorlight guy even said it was the roof. The Garland guy said it was the Armorlight roof was a bad roof.
That's how you know the warranty is expired.
I mean, he wasn't the guy who sold it. He was the new guy. I don't think he was,
Sold it.
I don't think he was super excited to drive up to Decorah and go on a roof that he wasn't super proud of.
The fact that it was recyclable was a selling point to the superintendent and the business manager at that time. So,
Thinking a little further down the road, so this roof, whether done in part or in whole at one time, is gonna cost between 800,000, $1 million, somewhere in that range. Does the funding for that come from insurance, from existing district money?
It'll be a PEPAL save purchase, because that'll be a building, funding. We've drawn down our PEPAL save a lot. One of the things that we're allowed to do after we do this project is we could, pass a resolution at a board meeting to do, reserve the right to borrow against that PEPAL and save money in the future if we needed, PEPAL and save cash on hand, which is something I just learned about last year. So, but so we can do the project. I'll be curious to see when we get, farther down the road. I guess I would like to do the whole thing just because I don't know. I'm looking at Carol because I know she just lived it. I don't know where it leaks the worst at, but I feel like
Library.
the gym would be one area where they're down at one end of the court and we're trying to dry the court off. That doesn't seem like that's a healthy situation. So, but.
No, I think one of the problems is things are, flowing. The initial leak might be over here, but the water gets in and winds up over here. So I think it's important we do it all, in one fell swoop to avoid peripheral damage.
And make an investment in our facilities and keep them up so, yes, I will get that prepared, and I just want to make sure I wasn't, heading off a direction the board wasn't aware of.
It might be worth contacting this Louisa Muscatine district and just ask them how they proceeded, and they might
I
have some
did
decent
talk to
advice. Oh, you
the
did?
superintendent there, and, It wasn't, maybe he was new, so it happened before him, and he goes, yeah, I know, we sued him a while back, and it took forever, and they finally admitted and paid for part of it, but unfortunately, I don't think 17 years. I mean, potentially, how long do you think a EPDM roof lasts? Do you do those every 20 to 30?
20 to 30.
Yeah.
But I mean, they might have an engineer who.
Oh,
might
okay.
recommend Possibly who,
They recommended Shy.
no, okay.
That was one of the ways I got to Shy, so. Yeah,
Okay. Next is the first reading of board policy 401.5 employee records.
this is just kind of a review of board policy as recommended. I don't have anything exciting to say about this, so, but, this is all coming from, there's a little part highlighted in yellow that, is the new stuff from the state.
You know, believe that this is the policy that would be essentially verbatim in 300 different school districts
Yeah.
around the
Yeah.
state, so.
Could be pretty common.
Okay, and again, this is the first reading, so
Yeah.
if approved tonight, we'll see it again next month.
February.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve of the first reading for code number 401.5 and 401.5R employee records.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is reviewing the proposed facility committee membership.
Yeah,
for
and so
potential new elementary school.
yes, and so, the board understands we're putting together the facility committee. We're gonna meet with Nick at the end of this month. I shared out membership separately. I wanna make sure the board is aware of who we're working on inviting. The folks on the list have all said they'd be willing to serve, I think so far, except one or two names. So, we got 2 board members on there. We're trying to get teachers and para represented, so there's a little bit of wiggle room to add some folks. But I think there's a lot of people with ties to the community, a lot of people ties to children. And understand that there'll be other committees that folks can work on, but this is just kind of our start. I don't necessarily need it approved as much as I would just say I'll work with Cindy to finalize the list and get everybody officially invited, but if there's questions about maybe, I don't want to say any specific name, but like if there's an area or a niche in the community you want me to make sure that we get represented, I can work on that as well.
Is there a perspective that we're missing?
There you go.
One thing that I mentioned to Tim as we've been working on this list for the last couple of weeks, I mentioned like, well, and just today I was like, well, we want to make sure that there's a balance of males versus females. Are there, and as Tim mentioned, there's connections with, people, our parents that have young children that are in elementary school right now. There's representatives from a variety of business sectors across our community, but
City,
the city of Decorah.
as we
So-
talk about tennis, I'm sorry for,
Mhm.
as we talk about tennis courts, it was like, yeah, it's really important to make sure that, and anything with facilities that we have.
We talked about people who might be knowledgeable in energy efficiency,
Mhm.
but what other buckets of either experience, knowledge, or expertise are we missing? And that's not necessarily a question that needs to be answered tonight, but if something comes to mind, definitely let's discuss, but feel free to share with Tim and I in the days to come.
And if we could get it finalized by Friday, people tentatively have said yes, I've got a date with Nick and I can just confirm it with everybody.
The only thought that came to mind when I reviewed the list was potentially someone with a pre-K mindset. So thinking maybe can kids are gonna be coming into the school, so whether that's a perspective from Sunflower or another. That's the only,
So like pre-kindergarten, preschool.
that's the only thought that I had when I was reviewing the list.
Mhm.
And I could tell you, we swapped out since I sent that. Dana Bachman with, Shannon Putnam Dibble. And that might catch, when there's a couple people that check a couple different boxes, like a parent box and a Luther College box. Sweet.
Sure.
But,
What about a transportation? I don't see anybody in here who will be needing to think. I mean, will this committee be thinking about bus flow and parking
So I would say
and
that
that, or
there
like, what, how much
isn't-
are they doing?
There is an engineer on the committee that has dealt with transportation.
Okay.
Mhm.
but those are, like Cindy said, are there anything areas that we wanna think about making sure we have covered? So absolutely. So I would just say that I'd hesitate to use people's names just for
No,
sake,
yeah.
so that's why I shared that, but just
Yeah.
kind of review what we're looking at. Keep it at 20 or less and get started.
Mhm.
So I think it's good progress on the list already.
Yeah.
Good.
It's an exciting project to start dreaming about.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next is the approval of Alto, a gas oven.
Of a gas, of a good.
I'm gonna
good
skip
call.
the name, a gas oven. And
And this
we have a purchase
is,
order.
this is a purchase order. This is a reimbursed part of a grant that Chad got. And so we have a quick debate over, so this really is gonna cost zero general fund dollars by the time we get reimbursed. But because it is over our $25,000, it's technically a purchase we're making. And we did it with some stuff for athletics. We should always, as a good practice, take purchases of $25,000 or more to the board, even if we've got someone donating money or we're getting reimbursed. So that's what this is, but I don't know if we need to talk anything more about. I think it's a great idea to approve this purchase. I'm super glad that Chad went out and got a grant for us.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is, yeah, it's a tall oven with, like, to be able to put racks and racks and racks of food. Looks beautiful. I'm grateful that we have staff that are ambitious to get grant funding.
Yeah, kudos to Chad for getting this. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So it is an approval, so I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And the superintendent's report.
So I started, there's a rough draft of a calendar for next year. And I just currently have the days on there. If you start Friday, August 23rd, and as a reminder, the 23rd of August is the first day you can start. You've got Christmas and New Year's on Wednesday, so that's always a challenge. You're probably not gonna have school on Monday, the 23rd, if you wanna be popular or.
Mhm.
And then it's when you come back. This year we had a virtual PD day for staff on January 2nd. I tentatively put 2 in. We're gonna meet on Thursday and just talk about how that went and how staff, how that worked. And when I say virtual PD day, it was also asynchronous. So if you had prepared and gotten done ahead of time, then you weren't required to report on January 2nd because you had done it asynchronously
Nice.
during the year. So it was kind of like your reward for getting your work done was January 2nd. And so just trying to make sure we got PD days in and got a calendar done. Right now, it would look like the last day of school would be about May 20th, 2025, which of course does not give you a lot of cushion for snow days. But Memorial Day is early. So that's just kind of a glance. Again, this is one of our agenda items for Thursday, but was sharing with the board. We would take any thoughts the board had with regards to, speaking to, I guess I assume it would be difficult to try to hold meaningful school between December 23rd and January 3rd.
Yeah, I would be in favor of having. It would just be great if we could have 2 solid weeks off
At Christmas.
around the holidays, both for kids, but especially for staff.
I agree.
I know that we've had a few unique years where we've had just dismissing in June, which I think that Tim has worked really hard to resolve and get onto a different calendar system, to prevent that from happening. And I'm not afraid of May 20th as being the earliest, dismissal day, knowing that there's likely gonna be a few cancellations, so.
Is April 1st, is that, you have it listed here as a spring vacation day?
Oh,
Here,
some of this is
that a
left
long
over,
weekend?
yeah.
Okay,
Maybe I haven't updated the center column, maybe I've just worked on the calendar part, so,
it'll just be a Friday and a Monday then, and not.
yeah,
Okay.
so this is unique, cause usually we have 2 4-day weekends. And this year with trying to find days, I only put in one, and it was the end of March, but.
Is that Easter weekend?
As I say that, I gotta look it up, cause we would put it around Easter weekend is where we would put it. So, again, I'm just trying to get days on there, and
Yeah.
usually when we sit and talk through about, okay, what's the best, I anticipate the, highly spirited conferences debate, this year with, some of my administrators who don't think I'm funny right now, but that's okay. So, and maybe being flexible with that, because we don't have to do all our conferences at the same time.
It's advantageous not to, for parents and teachers.
There's some benefits to not doing it at the same time.
For information, April 20th is Easter.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh, so that's why April 18th was, that's a PD day there, so it's Good Friday, so. So,
I laud the work you put in here. The only thing I'm catching potentially is that you've not done the math right in the 4th week of March, which for the entire week comes out to 0 hours, even though we've marked down that we're going to school some of those days.
yeah,
So we may have found some.
somebody just found some hours.
Some hours that, maybe give us some cushion at the end.
Nice. And school starting on a Friday, that'll be an interesting little.
We can-
Like
we-
that,
we
don't
can-
know
we
when
can,
they're gonna be
you
on the
know,
weekend.
We can have that discussion. I don't think having a day or two of school, maybe that's the elementary person in me, is the worst thing, cause it's like you come in and you get your routine down and then you could just,
It's solid, yeah.
so, but
Having
I,
that a whole first week, about 5 days is a little rough.
Adam, would that 23rd be a football game?
August
August 23rd, I believe it'll be the first day of school would be a football game, post scrimmage.
Seems early.
Third or 30th.
It might be the 30th, actually.
Okay.
Oh, good first draft.
yeah, so, we can look at that next month, and as we start to refine it, I'll share it out with the board. Notes wise, we've been working on a virtual backpack where groups can submit their items, and then we would just get them on a district website. And this will cut down hopefully lots of traffic and also make it easier for parents. We think it'll be beneficial and not have to have a piece of paper scanned and uploaded. The Senate File 496 that we worked a lot on with books. I think the summary was, there's a stay, so that's not enforceable. I copied and pasted Shannon's email because I thought it was just real descriptive, but I like, at the end, you know, not putting books back on the shelves could be viewed as a violation of students' right, period. So overnight, we are in a whole new reality.
Yeah.
And so, that was well stated.
Mhm.
IT services, I can update the board with this, but Sean and I are looking at maybe purchasing services from the AEA to help support the high school and John Klein for second semester. And putting stipulations on that it would be done like in-house and not remotely and function how it has in the past. And there's some benefits to looking at that.
Mhm.
So, but that's my report. We're back in session and well, who knows what tomorrow will be like as I sit here. I haven't been outside, but I know a lot of people have probably announced why we've been in this board meeting. And it's already been predicted at the Goodner House.
Put that in the notes. Okay.
Well, when we haven't had a snow day until
Yeah.
January 9th or whatever it is, we're ahead of the game.
Okay,
We don't need to have too many of them, but yes.
Right.
and last on our agenda is the financial report, and we're missing Kathy tonight, but does anyone have questions? Not that I would be able to answer them, but the report is attached for our review.
I'm sure if somebody does and they don't get an answer, we can always get an answer and get it back to you.
Mhm. Okay. I'm not hearing any questions. Okay, seeing that we are at the end of our meeting, we will adjourn.
Well,
See
Brian,
you.
keep it warm.